Welcome to another episode of VNture Podcast, your weekly source of visual novel goodness. I am Amar, and together with Tauros, we shall venture into another discussion about VNs. This week, we have a pleasure to talk with a very faithful VN fan and a fellow content creator. Welcome to the podcast, NeNeisan.
Hi, my name is NeNeisan. I started creating videos on YouTube almost, I think, 4 years now. I started off with anime reviews and things I watched at the time, but as my channel went on, I've mainly moved over to this beloved little niche of ours. I've kind of... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, absolutely. Go ahead. You okay? I just wanted to ask you a quick question. Basically, you mentioned getting started a while ago. What got you into uploading videos on YouTube and being a content creator?
Well, at first, I was mainly watching anime at the time, and I didn't have much people to talk about it with. And so at the time, I was watching Fate Stay Night, I believe, the anime adaptations. And around that time, I was also getting I was saving up to buy a computer. And at that time, I got my computer, got everything I need. I was like, why don't I make videos? Just try my hand at it. I've watched a lot of other anime YouTubers and kind of wanted to try my hand at it. And so I started first with a few movies and anime I've seen at the time. And then but at the exact same time, I was getting into the visual novel of Fate Stay Night. And so ever since then, I read that and been in love with the medium ever since, and just wanted to pour the passion I felt for these stories into videos.
Ooh, very cool. Video editing is not easy. So I'm surprised that you managed to dive headfirst and just start producing stuff.
It's very tedious. I've come to learn that now, especially now with the stuff I've been experimenting with.
Yeah, I mentioned on your video channel, you have a variety of different kinds of videos. Some of it are the review style topics for specific VNs. Sometimes you have opinion pieces on just the general genre as a whole. I remember one of them was like a Grand Order gacha roll stream, basically.
Oh yeah, I used to do those a little bit.
That's always fun. So I really wanted to point out some other people like to focus their content on like a specific VN series or a specific genre, you could say, like about moeges. But you really like to hit a wide variety of things?
Oh, definitely. I feel like if I did stick to one series or one genre, I feel like I would kind of get bored of doing so. And because of that, I feel like the content itself would kind of dull. So I've been kind of open to experimenting with new things. Like recently, I've kind of found myself in a review formula, and I've been kind of wanting to break out of that. So like with my recent Umineko video, I made one focusing on a theory and an interpretation of how to take a certain scene. And one I'm making now is for the visual novel 1, which is focusing more on another aspect and breaking it down.
Oh, what kind of aspect?
There's just kind of this overarching theme of eternity, pretty much. And it's essentially a huge allegory for depression. So I'm kind of taking a look at that, the characters and the struggles and how that applies to how eternity manifests in the visual novel story.
Dang, that's a hard one.
That sounds interesting.
That's true.
Usually you'll see, some kind of big, reviews on the themes of a work for plot-heavy titles like Umineko or other mystery types of titles, like, say, Raging Loop, perhaps. But to do it for a more character-focused work, especially something, from Key, which is viewed as pretty lighthearted, that's an interesting branch out from what other YouTube content creators for visual novels usually pull off. When you're reading visual novels, when you're deciding what to read next on like your personal backlog, do you ever consider making a YouTube video for it ahead of time?
Usually I do. I have quite a bit, but a lot of the other times it's. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's just very
Oh, no,
inconvenient timing.
no, that's
Uh,
great. Is that your dog?
Yeah.
Ah.
Aw.
Oh, hold on. I'm very sorry. This is very bad timing.
No, not at all. That's great.
Oh, don't
If you
worry.
need to take care of your dog, go ahead. You're totally
Exactly.
cool. Although, at some point in the future, I am going to ask you for pictures of the dog.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that would be great. Please send them our way.
Please send them. And if it's okay with you, well, we'll talk. And we'll see if we can also share it to all the listeners so we can see what kind of... Is it a big fluffy dog? Is it a small, adorable
Oh.
dog?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. I was someone was at the door. That's what was going on.
Oh, okay. You got a good guard dog.
Yeah, he's a very I forget the breed. I'm not very good with that, but he's a really pretty big and furry dog.
I see.
Ah, that's super sweet. If it's okay, we'll ask you to share pictures of your dog later.
Okay.
Give it a pet from us, okay?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. So sorry for getting derailed with that whole topic.
Oh no.
But basically, oh yeah. Basically, when you decide what to read next on your own personal time, like, do you ever consider the implications of making a video on it in the future, or do you just happen to read whatever you like and then later you decide this would be good content for a video? Or how do you balance like your whole YouTube stuff with your own personal preferences?
Usually it depends on the visual novel and kind of the inspiration I get from it at the time. Usually if I'm going into it, I kind of have the basis of, all right, if I do end up enjoying this, I'm going to make a review on it. And so I've kind of looked for things to write down and make sure to like keep my notes intact. But if there is something else that strikes me about it, like a particular aspect or something about the characters that really draws me in, I'll keep that in mind as I go forward and try to explain and write all my ideas down as I'm reading it, just to make a little more cohesive video and one that's a bit more fresh in my mind.
Was that the case with one?
Yeah, with one is actually pretty interesting with me, because at first when I was reading it, I wasn't all too into it. The first two routes, I was like, this is all right. It's definitely pre-key. How they write their characters and the story, it's not really what I was expecting, but that's because I was looking at it from the wrong lens. Because it's mostly a galgame, focusing mostly on the heroines and stuff, their personalities and the relationships between the two. Not much, I guess, drama that grows both, at least in the first two routes that I read. But then from then on, I saw where everything else was going, and it kind of clicked. I was like, okay. Because with the main character, Kohei, he suffers this threat of eternity where he will get whisked away to another world, and he'll have to look on to the real world, which nothing happens there. And slowly as I went through each route, all the pieces kind of came together, and I was like, this is interesting. And once the remake came out, I read the first one route of that and was able to write everything down, piece together what I needed to, and I had that idea in mind.
See, I mean, I have to say, after hearing you talk about one, right? It reminded me on another video of yours. When I watched it, I had my reaction of, he's one of my people. And I specifically mean Hollow Ataraxia, right? And you made it, your review of it, divided into two parts. And what I personally liked about that video, you had your honest, confusing, and how it just many questions and answered very few. But despite all of that, it was worth it with the payout. So you stuck long enough for all that build-up and all that confusion walking around, not knowing what to do and how to progress even at times. But it was still worth it at the payout. And when I heard that in the video, I knew to myself, I need to invite him. He's one of my people.
Oh, Hollow Ataraxia. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, I was just going to ask you for your thoughts about Hollow Ataraxia.
I was very surprised because when I hear like fan disc, I think of like funny side stories that happen. Maybe there's some character development, but not a lot. It's kind of just a fun add-on. And at first with Hollow Ataraxia, like the first half, you can kind of see that, but the overarching story with Bazet and Angra Mainyu, seeing that kind of play out and how the first half with like Shiro and all these like weird things going on in town, how it comes together in the end is something you just wouldn't expect, especially with the like label of fan disc technically.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'd be far more inclined to call it a proper sequel to Fate's Stay Night.
Same here.
I especially love how it showcases all the characters in a comedic setting. It's very fun seeing that huge gap between Fate's Stay Night, which was very serious for most of the time, and you have all these characters in life or death situations. And then here we are in Hollow Ataraxia, where you see all of these characters just hanging out, trying to manage normal daily life, like going to buy groceries, and all of the comedy that ensues. It's such a huge gap, yeah.
It gets pretty far out there too, like when Mareeck gets stuck in a treasure box for days or something.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, there's so many good scenes from it. And of course, like you mentioned, there's also the other half, the very serious side with Bazet, that feels much more tonally in line with Fate's Stay Night. So it's a great story of like two halves of whatever you want, just the whole carnival phantasm type of comedy and then the Fate's Stay Night seriousness.
And like for like the serious story side, it actually gets pretty deep. I was not expecting Angra Mainyu to be one of my favorite servants like to date, especially with all the recent Fate Grand Order stuff. He's still pretty high up there.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. And I have one more question in regards to Hollow Ataraxia, and you mentioned that in the review. Because of the confusing nature of progression in that title, did you think at using guide at any point? I wonder, because what's your thought on that?
Well, I felt the guide wasn't really needed for the most part, because I think trial and error kind of worked, skipping through the days. But there was one part in particular, I think I was stuck at like 99.7%, and that's when I needed to go online and look at something, because it was very specific.
So for the completion, you resorted to that, but for the main playthrough, you resorted to just trial and error. Okay.
Yep.
So I knew it. I knew it. This is one of my people. I knew it.
Not to get too distracted with Hollow Ataraxia. You mentioned that you saw the Fate Stay Night Dean anime, and that's what inspired you to start your whole YouTube career, and that's what got you into anime and visual novels too, right?
Well, anime goes all the way back. I was a little kid when I saw my uncle watching Bleach, and ever since I've explored the medium quite a bit. But it was Fate Stay Night that got me into visual novels. Because at the time I was saving up for a computer, and I realized I watched Fate Stay Night the Dean one, and then I went off course with Zero, and then I watched UBW. But because I was getting my computer pretty recently, I staved off on the Heaven's Feel movies and just got that and read through all of it.
Ooh, nice.
Don't regret a single second.
Do you have a favorite genre of visual novels?
I kind of read anything. I don't have a particular genre I stick to. Although, if a decent mystery can be like woven into a certain genre, then I mean, it usually has me like very interested and will keep me going. That's one thing Key does pretty well. Is though it's mainly slice of life, high school romance, drama, there's always some lingering mystery in the back that has you going, "What's this about?" or "How did this happen?" And it kind of unfolds over each route, and you kind of by the end everything's pieced together.
Mm, mhm. I feel the same way about the Zero Escape series. I know Zero Escape is very different from Keyworks, but still, that feeling of this mystery building in the background, and you just inches closer, and there's more questions, and you get a few answers that lead to more questions. I love that sense of progression and a mystery, trying to work things out early in your own head. Hmm.
Oh, it's great. That's one series I need to get into as well. I have it, just haven't played through it yet.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I totally recommend it. Very entertaining.
And but from the side of titles you did cover, what struck me as pretty unique, and it falls in line with what you just described, you like a slow build-up that accumulates and then goes on. Steins Gate. And what was unique about that video you made is that it was a review of both the end and anime at the same time. I felt like that's a very clever take. You kept comparing on different steps in that review, the end to anime, what anime skipped but improved on pacing, and where the VN gave you the perspective of main character, but because of that it dragged on before it get good, right? How do you feel about that kind of reviews about VN plus anime at the same time? You like that comparison? Is that what inspired you to do it?
It's very interesting because because I'm going through a few of Key's adaptations at the moment, and there's a bunch of small similarities and cuts you realize they have to make, but then there's a lot of like subtleties that they also take away to save time, and that kind of takes a little bit of the charm away from either the characters or the story, and that the difference between the two, I think, is important to point out, and it's something I want to try again at another point.
I mean, you did point correctly. The difference between Steins Gate VN and anime, and probably the biggest one in my opinion too, was how VN always gave you insight to what Okabe was thinking, and you knew what behind all the facade, what he's really thinking about. And regardless of how the text portrayed his behavior, you didn't really see it. But in the anime, it was flipped. You see his expressiveness, but never his thoughts.
Yeah, with Okabe especially, his character like, you're like, what's with this guy in the anime? He seems like all this like crazy banana or whatever.
Sure.
But then in the like at the same time in the VN where you get his like doubts, you're like, oh, like there's always this kind of feeling that it's not really direct in the first half at least, but you get this feeling that he's an actual human. He's not just a kind of expressive weirdo, essentially.
Yeah, true, exactly.
Speaking of which, who is your favorite character in a VN? Or perhaps favorite waifu?
Oh, I have a lot. One, I might be, well, as my Discord pick, Shizuki Soljiro from Witch on the Holy Night. He's one that really stood out, and in many ways I'm like, I relate to that. And
Is he the protagonist? I'm not very familiar.
He's one of the protagonists. Mihoyo pretty much is centered on three protagonists: Shizuki, Alice, and Aoko, and their kind of lives as it shifts when they meet each other. And another character recently from Little Busters is I've really grown attached to Kyosuke Natsume. He has this kind of
Nice.
childish, like fierce spirit that he's kept throughout and influences the many people and especially the protagonist when he meets. And his charm carries so much of it. And the more that it goes on, you kind of see this real like relatable and nostalgic side to that childish side we eventually like let go of or at least suppress a little bit. And how he brings that out while keeping this maturity to him, it's very nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Then wow, I'm actually very surprised you went with two male characters, usually either in a protagonist or supporting role.
I don't. It's weird because I do have a lot. I just feel like I can relate more, and so I have more attachment. But on the female side, probably Beatrice from Umineko.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there needs much explanation for that. But I'm also surprised that, of the characters you mentioned, a lot of them are very story involved. They really push the events of the visual novel, and I'm assuming, partially, they're all real forces of personality too, right?
Oh, definitely. Kyosuke especially. Uh, just he's the way he plays around and the way he like has jokes and stuff with the group, the Little Busters, which is pretty much the whole main cast. How he interacts with everyone and the events he sets in motion, just it's really heartwarming.
Hmm. On a different note, we're going to swing the scale over to the other side.
Ooh.
What would you say is the most disappointing visual novel you've ever read? Either maybe because it was just bad to begin with, or maybe you had high hopes for it and it failed to deliver. Just what's one title on the opposite end for you?
Visual. It's hard to say. I haven't really disliked any visual novel I've read so far. Maybe Harmonia from Key, but that would probably be to my own. How it was building up, I thought it was going to go in one way, but then it kind of went in another, and I thought it would have been a little bit more interesting to see, uh, going a bit less than the generic route.
I'm jealous of you. You
Oh,
apparently have just really had a blast with everything you've read.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes the
Oh.
beginning is a bit of a rough start for most VNs, but you can kind of like pick the pieces of what's going to be important, have it like sit on your mind a little bit, and then see it all unfold in the like second half. It's beautiful.
But back to your content for a moment, because I have one more video I wanted to discuss with you. And this is
Okay.
one that Tauros alluded at the start, how you tend to cover titles. Sometimes a review, sometimes about the concept in that title. But with one video in particular, with the Nasu vs. Magic, you took a concept from an author that spans the entire series. What made you do it? I mean, that was such an interesting video when you outlined all the magics and how that particular author likes to convey interaction of supernatural with the world.
That one, I was reading Tsukihime at the time, the remake, and as I was going through that, I've just kind of taken a little bit of notice to how it uses certain magics to make a theme out of it and have
Yeah.
the characters learn from that respective magic, or how that magic is symbolic of what a character's grief or what they want to aspire to be. And so I've kind of taken a look at that and wondered and realized how unique they can get with that.
True. I agree. That's why I was, That video definitely made me think. And on your end, is there any other author or series you feel like creating a video that is more than just a review or central about one title? Or was that a special occasion for Nasu?
I don't think it's gonna be a special occasion. I've been thinking of one for the Ryukishi's works
Oh,
with the When They Cry, Higanbana no Saku Yoru ni, which is another one of his. And I still have Rose Gun Days and another one I forgot the name of that I kind of want to look over, like his writing and how he uses the supernatural as like metaphors and stuff like that, and how he uses like the vagueness of truth to kind of spin a certain idea.
huh? Sounds very interesting.
I'm surprised you mentioned his other works. Most people know about Umineko and Higurashi, but you also busted out Rose Garden Days as well.
I've not read it yet, but I've seen the opening and the style looks really nice. It's kind of the tone they're going for.
On a different note, speaking of Fate stuff, there's one interesting tangent point for that I noticed with your channel, in that you talked about the recent Fate video game, Fate Samurai Remnant.
Ah, yes.
I've had my eye on it. I'd like to play it soon, but I just haven't gotten a chance to. But have you played it? Have you finished it?
I've 100%ed it a few months ago, and there's recently been a new difficulty edition I need to get to, but just haven't had time.
And did you like it? I'm assuming you
I-
did because you went and freaking 100%ed it.
I loved it. It blew away any expectations I had for it at first. It was like, when it was announced, I was like, oh, a Fate game. That's cool. But then as the kind of like the promotion campaign went on, I saw different things of like who's gonna be in it and certain like callbacks. And the more that came out, the more I was certain. I'm like, I'm gonna try it out. And when I did, I was my expectations were completely blown away.
What did you think about the characters?
Probably the strongest point of the whole game. At first, you kind of they're a bit more generic, and I don't want to say one-sided, but they're not as with the praise that some people give it. You wouldn't really expect it at first, but as you go along, and especially after you get one ending and play through it again, it unlocks new scenes that further develop each character and kind of who everyone truly is, and that all ties together thematically at the end why they set it up this way.
Interesting. Because my characters, the whole aspect of the characters was what I was most interested in with the game, and I guess hoping that they would pull it off well most out of anything. So that is good to hear that it's apparently solid on that front.
And the main character, Iori, is probably one of my favorite Fate protagonists. He's
that's high praise.
I mean, I
That is very high praise.
haven't followed that title at all, and you guys keep calling it a game. Does it have like gameplay elements?
Yep, it's kind of a JRPG, like small scale Muso blend. It's kind of just a lot of the time you can just spam one button, get things over with.
Okay.
But the boss fights do require a bit of thought and like practice with.
Okay.
Yeah, it's well and truly a video game and not a visual novel, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the sort of 3D anime action fighter.
Yep.
Which is interesting because the Fate series has certainly dabbled in video games in the past. You know, most notably, we've got the Fate Grand Order Gacha game, but even then, that's kind of in line with being a visual novel, sort of, kind of.
Mostly. Everything that I
yeah.
love about it comes from the visual novel side.
Same. So having a full-on like AAA production game like Fate Samurai Remnant is, I guess you could say, a breath of fresh air, something different with the Fate series recently.
I know they did have a like full-on Musou game with Fate Extella and Fate Extella Link, but I feel this one is a lot more concise and well thought out with the gameplay, and especially the story parts.
Yes. I was gonna say, yeah, but this one's good. So
Yeah.
Let's see. We're starting to run out of time. What out of all the videos you've made on your channel so far, NeNeisan, which one are you the proudest of?
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't. Either my Umineko thematic analysis or my Tsukihime remake review. I really put a lot of thought and work into the editing on those two in particular, and the Umineko analysis is kind of where a huge shift in my video creation kind of took a turn.
Ooh, very cool. And you mentioned the editing as well as, I guess you could say, the content involved, because those are kind of two very different aspects of making a video. One's kind of the more production side, and one is the content material, right?
Yeah, it's kind of set me up to how I format my scripts and kind of the tone I take, different transitions, and how I overall look over a series. And then my editing it's been less just clips, throwing in CGs, but ever since the Umineko stuff, I've experimented a bit more with manipulating sprites and backgrounds to lay out a scene and transition between the two.
That's impressive.
Ooh.
It's the little things that really make a video come alive.
Oh, certainly. And I fret over every little detail. It's hard sometimes, but I just have to go, all right, this is good.
Anything on your end, MR?
No, I think that's. I mean, especially with the Umineko, okay? I tend to, out of fear of spoilers, tend to avoid videos on titles I haven't read. So now you make me curious, but I know I haven't read Umineko, so I'm like.
Oh yeah, that I go heavy in the spoilers into that one.
Okay. So, yeah, interesting.
So we will protect MR's innocence.
Until you've read it, I will not let you in.
Yes, he's gonna go blitz through all of Umineko in the next 72 hours.
Wow.
Then he'll watch your video, just for you, NeNeisan.
Oh my god! Don't put me on the spot. How could
I think you're gonna need an extra day or two.
Oh.
I believe in you, MR.
No
Okay.
sleep.
No sleep.
Who needs
All
sleep?
right. On that note, thank you so much for dropping by, NeNeisan. We're very glad to have you on board, and I want to say, obviously, congratulations for putting out a lot of impressive material on your channel.
Oh, thank you very much. It's amazing that you guys do this, and I really appreciate you inviting me out.
It was a pleasure to talk with you, NeNeisan. You were great, and all thanks to our listeners. And on that note, venture out.
Venture out.
Bye bye.